If you're human, you probably experience negative thoughts, and those thoughts lead to feeling overwhelmed or stressed. And in my first few years in business, in which I built past 7 figures, I have experienced all of the above. Many times, quite frequently, and in this podcast, I'm going to share with you what I do when those negative thoughts occur. And it's a simple framework that helps me ruthlessly focus on my objective, even if I'm not motivated to do so. And so if you find yourself struggling with these feelings or negative thoughts, then you may find this useful. And if you're new here, my name is Ryan Rice. I invest in real estate full time. Last year, we scaled past 7 figures, and I document learnings here to share with you in the event that they're useful. And by the way, I have nothing to sell you. I want to start this by telling a story that has nothing to do with business, but stick with me. I'm going to tie it all in. My wife and I were having a conversation with someone we know who has a boy whose parents believe that he has a behavioral issue. And because his parents believe him to have this behavioral issue, they are seeking, quote, outside help. They are putting him through these programs to assess whether or not he has some sort of learning disability or has some sort of issue. We had the opportunity to talk to the parent, and I asked, what sort of things are happening that are leading you to have concern about the boy's behavior? And the parent said, well, when he doesn't get what he wants, he screams at the top of his lungs. And I thought, okay, what else? Well, when he's upset, he throws lots of tantrums. Okay, what else? Well, he doesn't listen to us very well. And when we try to get him to do something, he shows a lot of resistance, and then he starts screaming at the top of his lungs. And I said, okay, well, it sounds like he's just being a kid. And mind you, this boy is, I don't know if he's 2 or 3, somewhere in that range. He's a toddler. And the parent said, well, I know, but I've explained the behavior to several different, quote, professionals, and they tell me that there might be a problem. And so we just want to make sure. And I remember talking to my wife after we finished the interaction with the parents and thinking to myself, thank God that this boy is so young that hopefully he won't remember any of these interactions of trying to figure out whether or not the boy has a problem. Because to me, everything that was just described is describing what children do. And not to get too deep into behavioral psychology, but I remember telling my wife, likely what has occurred is that boy was reinforced or rewarded for throwing a tantrum or for screaming at the top of his lungs. As a result of him doing that, he got what it is that he wanted, and therefore he was conditioned to do it over and over until it's proven that he doesn't get what he wants when he behaves like that. And to tie it all back, you're probably wondering, okay, Ryan, what does this have anything to do with my negative thoughts or feelings? Well, I bring up this story about a kid because our entire lives, we are conditioned to believe that if we feel or experience some sort of negative thought or behavior, then something is wrong with us. Society has this expectation that, oh my gosh, you have so much anxiety. Oh, you should go talk to a therapist about that. Oh, you're dealing with self-doubt. Oh my gosh, something is wrong with you. You should never have self-doubt. And we're taught so early on that if we simply experience these thoughts, if we simply experience these feelings, then something is wrong with us and we label ourselves with a problem. And so how I deal with stress, how I deal with overwhelm, anxiety, is when I feel those feelings coming on, I don't label it as a problem. I understand that the reason I feel those things is because I'm living, because I'm breathing, I'm a human being, and because when they occur, I don't see them as a problem, I don't try to fight them. And because I don't try to fight them, I don't give them power over what it is that I'm doing. And because I don't give them power, then I just keep doing what it is that I'm doing. And so I think the first thing that we can do to combat those feelings is we eliminate the fact that we shouldn't be feeling them. We eliminate demanding ourselves that we always have this positive outlook, demanding of ourselves that we shouldn't be feeling this certain way. And the fact that when those feelings occur and we feel it's a problem, that in and of itself is the problem. And I want to take this to a hypothetical extreme just to illustrate the point. Imagine if at all times, or maybe many times, every single hour, we always had these feelings of negative thoughts and anxiety occur. And they happen so frequently that we simply expected them to occur. And because we expected them to occur, we then don't see it as a problem. And because then we don't see it as a problem, we stop trying to fight it. And when it arises, we simply take it with us, we put it in our pocket, and we keep focusing on the objective at hand. And if you hear me getting passionate, the passion is not coming from a place of, oh, this is a sermon and this is what you should do. These are things, and this is the way I constantly talk to myself, and I'm constantly having to remind myself of these things because it's something I regularly work through. And to give an example, at the end of the day, I don't sit down with my wife and say, hey, babe, I really need to talk to you about something. I have this problem that I'm working through. I had some bowel movements today. And if I did do that, she would probably look at me cross-eyed and say, Ryan, what the hell are you talking about? The reason I don't do that is because it's not relevant. It's not a problem. Hopefully, I expect those things to occur. But because society has conditioned us to believe that if we experience some sort of anxiety or negative thoughts, then we have a problem. If we experience overwhelm, then there is an issue. Then we feel the need to label it as a problem and bring it up and figure out what we can do to fight it. And that's the thing. There is nothing to fight. It's the equivalent of a bowel movement. It happens. We're human beings. Those are the feelings and the thoughts that we experience. So when we eliminate any of these negative thoughts and feelings being a problem to begin with, then the problems simply evaporate and we can continue to do what it is that we need to do. And so then comes, well, what do we need to do? Well, the definition of overwhelm is simply we have a lot of thoughts going through our head. We have a lot of things that we feel that we need to do. And we simply have a lack of clarity on what to do next. And so step one for me in this mental framework is I stop labeling the issue as a problem. Step two is I simply work to get clarity. And I think there's a few different ways we can get clarity. We can get a mentor. We can read a book. For me, what has been most effective in terms of clarity is putting in ruthless effort, getting so crystal clear on where it is that I'm going. And the reason why that's so effective is if I have a lot of competing priorities, or if I have a lot of things and I'm feeling very overwhelmed, then all I have to do is ask myself the question, what is the one thing on this list in front of me right now that will get me closer to where it is that I want to go? And if there are many things that will accomplish that objective, then I will ask the question, what will get me the furthest? What is the one thing that will get me closest to where I want to go more than any other thing on this list? And by eliminating everything else that I'm focused on, and I then have that one task at hand, I have crystal clarity and I can simply take the action I need to take to move closer to my goals. And so if you are an employee and you are working for someone and you feel this sense of overwhelm, it could very well be that you simply haven't taken the time to write down all of the things that are in front of you and then asking yourself, okay, what is the objective at hand? And then which one of those tasks is going to move me furthest, move me the closest to the objective at hand? Now, if you do that activity and you still struggle with clarity, it could be very well a symptom of the business owner prioritizing everything, because that is one thing that is very difficult and something I'm constantly trying to work at. As a business owner, for me, everything is always important and we need to accomplish all of these things all at the same time. And I know my job is to do my best to ruthlessly communicate what the actual priority is so that we can all have a sense of focus. And so if you're an employee, one way that I think you can combat that is you make your list and you present it to your leader and you say, hey, based on this and based on the fact that I think this is our objective, here is what I think is the priority, but I'm not going to lie, it's something I'm struggling with. Can you help? And then the business owner can simply confirm or deny which priority that you think is best. And the way that I get clarity as a business owner is I am constantly thinking about what is the one thing that if I fix in my business right now that takes care of most other issues, and then figuring out how can I ruthlessly go after what that one thing is and have that be the priority. And that, by the way, is very difficult. I'm constantly having to remind myself what is the one thing and how can I make sure that my focus stays on that one thing. Another thing on getting clarity, and this is something I actually think that I have a good amount of skills on, sometimes to a fault because I'm seeking more of my own agency, more of my own ability to decide and do things on my own. But if I lack clarity on something, I simply ask myself, well, who would know the answer? Who would know what to do because they've experienced this exact scenario? And then I just go ask them. And that has been really helpful because it eliminates any sense of overwhelm because I can literally just go ask to someone who's 5 steps ahead of me, hey, I know that you've been in this experience. What have you seen is the best course of action? And if I go through that, if I ask myself those questions and I don't have access to a person that would have those answers, then again, I just ask myself, what would get me closer to the outcome that I'm after? And then I quickly make a decision and I quickly act. But I cannot emphasize enough the amount of days where I do something, even though I don't feel like doing it. And said otherwise, I don't feel that I'm motivated, but I take the action anyway. It's all the time. And I think the reason why many people will describe me as disciplined is because I don't see the feeling of a lack of motivation as an issue. I don't see it as something, I need to get motivated. I simply have clarity on why I'm here, what is the objective that I'm after, and what is going to move me closer to that objective. And many times in the presence of a lack of motivation, we have an option. And I have a good friend who describes this very well. We can either feel better or we can be better. And what happens in the moment when we feel unmotivated, what makes us feel better is by not doing the thing. Whatever the task is at hand that we don't feel motivated to do, we feel better instantly by getting distracted, going on social media, getting a hit of dopamine, hitting the snooze button, staying in bed. Those are the moments where we feel better. But those moments prevent us from being better. And so we just constantly have to ask ourselves, I just constantly have to ask myself, do I want to feel better or do I want to be better? And what's ironic is that if we choose be better, and despite not feeling motivated, we take the action anyway, in the long run, if we do that consistently enough, we actually end up feeling better. And the reason we feel better is because we get better. And so to wrap this up, the only time that we struggle with something is when we fight it. And we fight it because we deem that it's meaningful. We have these negative thoughts, these negative feelings. We have a lack of motivation. We say, I shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't have these thoughts. Why do I have these thoughts? What do I need to do about it? And we try to fight it. But if, when the thought or the feeling comes up, we refuse to fight it because we don't even find it relevant to begin with, we experience the thought and we just say, what's up? You're here again. And we acknowledge that we're having those thoughts and we're having those feelings because we're human. And because we're human, we know that we expect to feel those thoughts. And because we have that expectation, we're not going to give the thought any power over ourselves. And because we're not giving it that power, it means that we choose not to fight it because we know that it's not a fight worth having. When that happens, the problem itself shrinks into irrelevance and we can simply focus on the objective at hand. So I hope that's useful for you. That is probably the quote keys to the kingdom as to why many people around me who know me personally call me disciplined. I just refuse to see a lot of the things that I experience as a problem. And a lot of other people do see it as a problem. But because for me it's not, then I can just focus on what it is that I need to do. And so if you know someone out there who is struggling with anxiety or negative thoughts or a lack of motivation, if you feel this would be helpful, send it to them. That is the one and only way that this podcast grows. It would mean a ton to me. Share it on your Instagram or send it to the friend who's having these issues. And hopefully the elimination of the label of a problem itself can help a lot more people just move to doing what they know they need to do to begin with. So I appreciate y'all. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.